Hi, my name is Barbara Albert. I'm the co-founder and the director at 100% Renewables, a specialist consultancy. Today, I will share stories of local governments in New South Wales going renewable. I will start very briefly with introducing the international and local context for climate change action. I will then showcase the many ambitious carbon reduction and renewable energy commitments of capital cities and local governments. After that, I will do a deep dive into 3 case studies from local governments in New South Wales. Firstly, I will be talking about how a council can influence the community to increase the penetration of renewables. I will then talk about innovative projects like floating solar and solar farms at scale. And finally, my last case study will be on procuring renewables for local governments via power purchase agreements. A little bit of background information about what we do. We are a specialist consultancy helping large energy users, especially councils, develop and achieve their energy and carbon goals. We are proud to have delivered the renewable energy master plans for Lismore Council, Coffs Harbour Council, Port Macquarie Council, Tweedshire Council and many more. We've also developed a net zero plan for Bega Valley Shire Council. Last year in January, my first book, Energy Unlimited, was published, which describes a 4-step method on how businesses can transition to renewables in the most cost-effective way. Patrick, who is a co-director at 100% Renewables, and I are currently working on publishing our second book, which will focus on carbon accounting. Now, in 2015, 2 important things happened from a climate change perspective. Firstly, the Sustainable Development Goals, or short SDGs, were published by the United Nations. The 17 SDGs managed to express in a common language what sustainable development is all about. For instance, ending poverty or zero hunger. Ramping up renewables aligns with several SDG goals. Renewable energy projects certainly meet Goal 7 and Goal 13, but they also meet Goal 8, decent work, and Goal 9, innovation and infrastructure, and also Goals 11 and 12, sustainable cities and responsible consumption. In December in the same year, the Paris Agreement got signed by more than 190 nations. The Paris Agreement commits us to zero net emissions by 2050 to avoid catastrophic climate change. Australia is a signatory of the Paris Agreement, which is why many states and territories have committed to zero net emissions by 2050. States and territories are also leading the way when it comes to renewable energy commitments. The ACT, for instance, has committed to 100% renewable energy by 2020, as has Tasmania, 100% renewable energy by 2022. South Australia is also leading the nation in terms of renewable energy. From virtually zero renewable energy production in 2003, it has grown to produce over 40% of their energy from renewable sources. Unfortunately, there is not as much leadership coming from the Commonwealth Government. Australia has committed to producing roughly 20% of our energy demand from renewable sources, while we are aiming to reduce our emissions by 26 to 28% from 2005 levels by 2030. Now, as we all know, since the carbon price was abolished, emissions have headed upwards. This slide shows the carbon and renewable energy commitments of our capital cities. Most cities have already reached or are committing to become carbon neutral. A few capital cities like Sydney, Adelaide and Perth have made commitments outside of their operations and extended it to their local government areas. In our experience, it is local governments that are the real heroes of climate change action. While there is not much happening on a federal level, there is certainly a lot of action happening on a local level. We have been tracking ambitious carbon and energy commitments, renewable energy commitments, since 2014, when we developed the Renewable Energy Master Plan for Lismore City Council. Back then, only 3 towns had made commitments to ambitious targets. They were Yakandanda in Victoria, Newstead in Victoria, and Lismore City Council. Back in 2014, drawing this graphic was easy, as there were only 3 entries. 3 years on, in 2017, there were many more commitments, and this year we had to change the design of the graphic to fit all the commitments on one graphic. This is what it looks like in 2018, and I was made aware of a few more commitments, so now the graphic needs to change again, which is fantastic. Now that I've told you about the background and what's driving climate change action, let's have a look at 3 case studies. The first one is about North Sydney Council. Now, North Sydney Council have developed a program called Smart Energy Future. In the past, North Sydney Council has focused a lot on the operational carbon footprint. They've implemented a whole heap of energy efficiency measures and have implemented solar across the operations. They also purchased 50% green power for the large sites. Now they have started to look outside of their own operational boundaries to extend their reach to the community. It is North Sydney Council's goal to reduce the carbon emissions in the community by 56,000 tonnes a year. To that effect, they hired us, 100% Renewables, to help them with the feasibility study and the community engagement. So we looked at abatement opportunities, the current carbon footprint, and then did lots and lots of community engagement to see which actions were feasible and which weren't. So we ran a series of workshops, presentations, and the North Sydney Council hosted an expo where they brought the community and providers together to enable a clean energy future. They've also engaged Our Energy Future, a partner organisation of North Sydney Council, which has a helpline and runs several workshops and seminars to help the community with the uptake of renewables. Now, 100% Renewables, we also developed avatar sheets for North Sydney Council, and these are a really good way of looking to increase the uptake of renewables in the community, because not everyone's the same. There are people that live in houses, people that live in apartments, there's the residential community, there's the business community, and everyone has their own unique specific needs. So it makes sense to drill into every segment of the community and to create avatar sheets that represent one segment of the community. So before we developed the avatar sheets, we looked at the carbon footprint, as I've mentioned before, and the abatement opportunities. Now, just focusing on rooftop solar or lighting energy efficiency alone would easily achieve the target. As you can see, the long bottom bar, the renewable energy purchasing one, is endless. So you can meet every energy demand with purchasing renewables, and there is no limit. We also developed the so-called bubble graph. It shows the size of the opportunity, and then again you can see how renewable energy purchasing and peer-to-peer energy trading are really large bubbles because they reflect the 56,000 tonnes of abatement opportunity. In reality, they could be as big as needed. But what's clearly seen is that the left bottom quadrant is where the net benefit is the greatest and where the opportunity is simplest to implement. Energy efficiency is still the cheapest opportunity, and it's relatively simple to implement. Now, the bubble of peer-to-peer energy trading is large, but currently it's not available on a wide scale yet, but it's certainly a big future opportunity. Now, we've split the solar potential across houses, apartments, businesses, have included battery storage and community solar. As mentioned, purchasing green power is the biggest opportunity. It's easy to implement, but unfortunately is not one of the cheapest methods currently. Now, these are examples of avatar sheets. So firstly, apart from having avatars like Tony on the right, we created two avatar sheets, or two sheets that talk about the renewable energy technologies themselves. So they explain what solar panels are, what heat pumps are, what solar hot water is all about. And then we have another sheet for planning. So do you need to talk to council when you install solar panels? What do you need to be mindful of? If your house is in a heritage conservation area, is there anything you need to be careful when you install solar panels? And on the right, you can see the avatar sheet for Tony, who is a tenant in a strata titled apartment. Every avatar sheet has the current opportunities and the near future opportunities, but also a whole heap of service providers and web pages that can help Tony further with increasing the uptake of renewables. Now, two more examples of avatar sheets. One's Tracy, who is a strata committee member. There's lots and lots of things to consider for strata, and we delved really deeply into requirements of strata, and it's all distilled into the avatar sheets here. And by the way, if you want to download the avatar sheets, just Google Smart Energy Future and North Sydney Council and you'll find the right page. On the right, we've got Sonia. She's an owner-occupier of a house, and she has got by far the most opportunities because she has full control over her house and lots of roof space. North Sydney Council has also implemented a pilot project. Now, most of you would have heard about the split incentive problem, where a landlord would implement an energy efficiency measure or implement solar PV panels, which comes at a cost, but the tenant benefits from the implementation. And that's called a split incentive because neither can act. The landlord won't act because it's costing money and there is no return, and the tenant won't act because he or she can't. Now, North Sydney Council have the Co-Loader Centre for Sustainability, a beautiful centre as you can see in the picture. And there is also a very nice cafe situated there, which the cafe owner wanted to install solar panels on the roof, but because the building is owned by North Sydney Council, there we have the split incentive problem. But because it's North Sydney Council, they found a solution. North Sydney Council invested $12,000 in a 9.8 kilowatt system and engaged some tenants to provide the facilitation and monitoring of the solar solution. Now, the capital expense is recouped through an increased rent, which provides North Sydney Council with 18% of internal rate of return over the 25-year lifespan of the project. The return on investment is 14%. Now, some tenants charge North Sydney Council $95 yearly, and the tenant saves approximately $900 yearly, and they get renewable electricity for the cafe. My second case study is about innovative projects like floating solar and mid-scale, and I'll be mentioning Lismore, Newcastle and the Sunshine Coast Councils. Lismore have done so many things in terms of sustainability and clean energy. One of their most well-known projects is the community floating solar. Now, there are two community solar projects. One's on the Sport and Aquatic Centre. The other one is on the East Lismore STP, the sewage treatment plant. Now, the purpose of the project was to install 2 solar farms on 2 of Council's high-use sites, funded with a community loan. So this is how it works. A community group of investors raised the capital for the solar farms. They then loaned the money to Council to install the solar farms. Council repays the loan with interest, and the community shareholders get back a franked dividend. This is what it looks like. The picture on the right shows the floating solar at the East Lismore sewage treatment plant. Currently it's a 100 kilowatt system, but Lismore Council intends to upgrade that to a 300 or 400 kilowatt system. So it's currently the largest floating solar implementation in Australia. Now on the left you can see the roof of the Aquatic and Sports Centre. It's now covered in solar panels, another 100 kilowatt installation. As a result, Council was featured on ABC Landline, has received many awards and certainly increased its reputation as a sustainable region. It's also a trailblazer for future similar projects. Now, there are other examples of mid-scale developments. So mid-scale, in our terminology, is developments between, say, 1 and 15 megawatts. We've got the Sunshine Coast Council with the Valdora Solar Farm, which is a 15 megawatt plant commissioned in 2017. The savings in year 1 of their operation exceeded their targets. Newcastle Council is in the process of developing a 5 megawatt solar farm on an old capped landfill site, which is awesome because it's contaminated land and there are not many other land uses, so why not use it for harvesting renewable energy? The city of Fremantle is also developing a 5 megawatt plant on a landfill site, and Barry Bamera in South Australia is looking to develop a 10 megawatt plant. Picture on the right shows an artist's impression of what the Summerhill solar farm will look like for Newcastle Council. Now, when the Sunshine Coast and Newcastle councils developed the business cases for their solar farms, wholesale electricity prices had shot through the roof, which was mainly a result of the Hazelwood power station closure. The higher electricity prices, the more sense it makes for a council to develop their own solar farm. Also, every megawatt hour of renewable energy generation is eligible for one LGC, which can be sold in the market. If a council wants to improve the business case and does not need the associated carbon reduction, it can sell those LGCs. However, the National Energy Guarantee flags the elimination of LGCs, and past 2020, LGCs may only be worth a floor price equivalent to the price of a carbon offset. These factors have to be taken into account for councils developing the business case for mid-scale solar farms. Every case needs to be evaluated on its own merits. The third and last case study I would like to showcase today is the Southern Sydney region of councils, and it's about the power purchase agreement that they've entered into. Now, what are power purchase agreements? A power purchase agreement is a contract between an electricity buyer and an electricity generator. They've existed forever between generators and retailers. But the new thing is that now corporations are entering into renewable energy power purchasing agreements, which is fantastic because power purchase agreements enable the hedging of electricity prices, and you can get electricity from renewable sources. Typically, you pay a rate per kilowatt hour. PPAs help off-takers, that is you, the corporation who purchases, hedge against volatile electricity prices. It helps to secure energy supply, and if you retire the LGCs, it's going to help you to achieve sustainability goals. PPAs are fantastic for local governments that don't have access to cheap land like metropolitan councils, but they do require a long-term commitment. Now I want to leave you with a picture on the right which shows Patrick, co-director at 100% Renewables, when we visited the White Rock solar and combined wind farm. This is an amazing renewable energy farm where you've got a co-location of solar panels, which you can see in the background, and wind turbines even further in the background. It's a wonderful, wonderful renewable energy farm. So the renewable procurement that SSROC has undertaken, SSROC is a conglomeration of 11 councils. They have a target of 30% renewable energy. Now they entered into the SSROC PPAS program to jointly tender for electricity and gas, but also for renewable electricity. Now, a criterion was to only go ahead if the project price is cheaper than grid electricity. And I think in the next few days, it will be announced that this is just so. Now, 18 councils have joined the program, more than SSROC members, because it has attracted a lot of interest. Now, SSROC released the tender, as I said, for an offtake agreement for bundled and unbundled electricity plus LGCs. So every council was able to submit their own requirements. The load size was determined by how many councils wish to participate and the percentage of renewably sourced energy. Now the balance of councils' load will be with a regular retail agreement. And this concludes my presentation for today. I hope you enjoyed me showcasing 3 case studies of local governments ramping up renewables. I'm hoping that you will join me again on this channel in the future. Thank you.